Bernard Madoff used his position at the head of Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities to orchestrate the largest Ponzi scheme in financial history. This fraud grew quietly for 3 decades, expanding through various market cycles before the 2008 global financial crisis triggered its total collapse. The audit trail reveals a massive discrepancy in the damage. While client statements claimed $65 billion in fabricated gains, the actual cash losses from investor capital totaled approximately $18 billion. Madoff cultivated the image of a Wall Street pioneer, serving as chairman of the Nasdaq and positioning himself as a prominent philanthropist. While his public prestige suggested a sophisticated operation, the reality was a void. No actual trading occurred, and every client statement was a total fabrication. Madoff's firm operated as a scale model common theft, weaponized by his access to global capital markets. To maintain the flow of new capital, Madoff marketed a proprietary investment model known as the split strike conversion. The alleged mechanics, buying large cap stocks, selling call options, and purchasing puts to hedge against losses. But the reality was much simpler. Deposits were routed directly into a personal checking account, paying redemptions for earlier investors. Harry Markopolos, a quantitative analyst and derivatives expert, was among the first to scrutinize the firm's reported performance data. Markopolos began by testing whether Madoff's returns could be replicated, a process that quickly uncovered the statistical inconsistencies he would eventually report to the SEC. One primary discrepancy involved OEX index call options. Markopolos calculated the total open interest in the market was only $9 billion. This was a hard limit. To hedge his stated assets, Madoff needed $50 billion in options, liquidity that simply did not exist. Since any forensic look at the data effectively collapsed the facade, Madoff used psychology as his primary defensive layer. The perpetrator's psychological profile explains why these mathematical red flags remained unchallenged for decades. Clinical indicators of a white-collar psychopath were evident: a lack of empathy for victims, extreme narcissism, and a pervasive sense of entitlement. This need for total control manifested in obsessive-compulsive behaviors, including his rigid enforcement of immaculate office cleanliness. Rather than a pre-planned, decades-long master plan, the fraud emerged from overconfidence and a series of rationalizations that allowed a temporary shortfall to grow into a permanent lie. With a wildly successful legitimate brokerage already established, the theft served to maintain Madoff's identity as a dominant figure on Wall Street. His primary operational tool for acquiring new capital was affinity fraud. Madoff targeted his own in-group, leveraging shared history and tribal loyalty within wealthy Jewish communities and social clubs in New York and Palm Beach. By weaponizing social trust, Madoff created an aura of exclusivity that discouraged his victims from performing standard institutional due diligence. This psychological manipulation extended beyond the victims to the regulatory system itself. Madoff's defense relied on reputational bias, the phenomenon where an individual's prestige alters how authorities perceive their actions. This halo effect acted as a filter. SEC examiners viewed Madoff as a respected statesman, dismissing blatant warning signs. Detailed reports from Markopolos dating back to 1992 were sidelined as the agency prioritized Madoff's reputation over quantitative evidence. During internal audits, the SEC incorrectly assumed the risk involved front-running, using brokerage data for an unfair trading advantage, rather than a total fabrication of assets. Because they were looking for a different crime, investigators failed to perform the most basic check, verifying the physical existence of the securities Madoff claimed to hold. Regulatory capture ensured that Madoff's engineered prestige effectively overrode forensic logic. The system finally broke in 2008. As the global financial crisis triggered massive redemption requests, the lack of actual capital forced Madoff's confession. In March 2009, Madoff pleaded guilty to 11 federal felonies, entering the plea without any agreement to reduce his sentence. Judge Denny Chin sentenced him to 150 years in prison, the maximum allowed, calling his actions extraordinarily evil. The focus then shifted to a massive recovery effort led by a court-appointed bankruptcy trustee. This highlights an unprecedented result. The trustee recovered over $14.8 billion, more than 80% of the cash lost by victims. Significant portions came from civil forfeitures. including $2.2 billion from the estate of Jeffrey Pickauer and $1.7 billion from J.P. Morgan Chase. The scale of these forfeitures suggests that the scheme relied on a network of institutions, prioritizing fee revenue over standard due diligence. The case leaves a persistent question. How many sophisticated institutions recognized these mathematical impossibilities, but maintained a posture of willful blindness? Madoff's success defines the risks of information asymmetry, where the illusion of exclusivity is used to block transparency. This history serves as a warning that in financial markets, trust and reputation are never functional substitutes for quantitative verification. When regulators succumb to a halo effect and investors prioritize access over audits, the market loses its inherent capacity for self-correction. Bernard Madoff realized that a system blinded by prestige will willingly ignore the truth.